Conversations with Sandra. I love doing interviews and conversations. I don't have a whole bunch of questions all lined up for my wonderful guest, Carla Rotering, if I'm saying that right, Dr.
Yes.
Carla Rotering, physician. And we have met doing our book writing. It's an amazing group. And here we are talking about the book. The book. You studied consciousness and health and healing at the University of Santa Monica.
I
How long
did.
was that, or should I ask?
Well, it was so I began that work in the early 2000s, in the middle of my medical career, right?
Oh,
So yeah,
goodness.
yeah. Really at that point in your life where you realize you've kind of lost your way, that you've really entered into something from a really pure heart and good intention and got caught up in it, and lost your direction and took a look in the mirror and said, oh boy. And then in that discovery, I was really led to the University of Santa Monica, and I got a master's degree there, and
Okay.
did
I'm
tons of
learning
stuff.
something new. I thought, oh, there it is. But that's the way I love these conversations to go. So you
Yeah,
had already been doctoring?
yeah. I was probably 15 years or so into my medical career.
And were you
I,
specializing or were you a GP? I mean,
no,
I don't know if the terminologies are all the same as the States.
yeah, I still do a little, I still practice part-time. So, um, but I was a pulmonary and critical care physician.
Okay.
So sort of an unusual specialty for somebody back in the day, for a woman back in the day. Um, so I was, in the critical care unit, running ventilators, doing procedures, doing all of that kind of stuff. And I was chief of staff at this hospital at the same time.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
That would have
yeah.
been unusual as well for a woman, would it not?
I was the first woman chief of staff of an acute care hospital in the state of Arizona. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh, I've got a rock star here in the medical world. This is wonderful. What else did I have here? I just saw that you were having a birthday, but it was actually the 14th. It was Monday.
It was.
And I loved some of the wording that you used because we're both writing our books. But
Yeah.
today is your turn to talk about your book. And the working title is in the ticker tape here, Bartering for Belonging. And here's what I read as part of your birthday message because it's so beautiful. I'm excited to get reading your book. As I stutter along in this particular phase of my life, I overhear myself plotting. What perfect mark might I leave on the world? So, what perfect mark have you come to think you might leave on the world beyond being the first woman in so many ways? Wow, inspiration for us women.
Well, so what really was happening with me as I kind of wrote that, was this recognition that everything that I thought was legacy had something to do with what I do.
Mm.
If I do this, then I'll make a difference. Then my whatever time this is that we have on the planet will have mattered, right?
Yeah.
And so I really sort of once again sort of discovered myself in this space, looking at things that I embrace. I mean, I really love the opportunity to do something that touches someone's life, that makes a difference. And I've been deeply privileged to be a physician and to be in the presence of people in their most vulnerable
Mm.
moments, right? But my realization was that It wasn't so much what I was doing in those moments that mattered. It was the presence that I brought to that person, the way of being that I brought to that person that that was the highest and best medicine I ever could have on offer.
Wow. Wow.
Now,
Isn't that incredible? I mean, you're
yeah.
giving me goosebumps as I listen to you. And I know your experience, your own style of goosebumps, either while you were writing it or even now as you're plotting your book that's going to uncover all of this stuff for I know men will get into it, but women will really be deeply into it, discovering ourselves. And the men that support women will be deeply looking to discover themselves as well, because I think as woman frees herself to be, the men who also want that same yearning that support us will be able to step into their freedom as well. So that's what I see you doing with this kind of a book.
Thank you.
It's
Yeah.
freeing people. Can I tell that one story when you were introducing yourself in the group and you wondered when you were finishing up some surgery and you said, how come it's so quiet in here? Nobody's speaking up. And I remember you saying, and I might have it wrong, but the way I pictured it was the nurse turning to you, knee to knee, you two turned and faced each other, with knees a touching in that little space. And she said, because everyone's afraid of you.
Mhm.
Did I get that right?
What she said was because you scare the hell out of everyone.
I was hearing the pretty version.
Yeah, there was nothing pretty about this
You
moment,
scare
right?
the hell out of us. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was life changing for you. I don't know whether it whacked you alongside the head right that very
It
moment.
did.
Oh,
Mhm.
did it?
Oh, yes.
Not just as you reflected as you were cleaning up or anything.
No, it was a moment of pure epiphany. Honestly, and I had really become a bully in the workplace. And for whatever reason, people still really took great care of me and did good things for me. Uh, um, but I kind of justified it because nobody worked harder than I did, and nobody had a more noble purpose than I did, and nobody cared more, and blah, 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 right? And when she said that to me, and I could feel it, I could feel like I started to I was ready to rumble with her, right?
At that moment,
And then literally in a heartbeat, something shifted inside of me and I just collapsed. And I thought, that's true. That's true.
we don't know how powerful our words are. I mean, those were
Yeah.
words of innocence for her. Look, I'm
Oh,
just going to tell you the way it is, lady.
yeah.
Yeah.
Courageous words. I mean, that took courage.
I
I was
probably
chief
had
of
a left to
staff.
hear because they were all working as hard as you were.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that assumption that there's that assumption that some of us carry sort of all of our lives that there's nobody but me. I'm the only one. I'm the only one who, um, and it was the other piece that's so interesting to me about that is that it was such a relief.
Ah, yes, I
It was
totally
such a,
get that. I
yeah.
taught school decades ago when I came out of teachers college. That was still teachers college. And I remember my brother-in-law used to tease me and just drive me crazy. Oh, ask the teach. She's got to know. Ask the teach. She has to know. And the pressure built because I hadn't understood yet how to stand up with that.
Yeah.
And it stayed with me until I got my answer, which of course I don't have to know everything. My job as a teacher is to help people find their own answers. And that, so I remember that relief because
Yeah.
that was pressure. I was only 20. I was a baby.
Oh, well, I was much older before I got it. So,
Well, that was just one of
yeah.
the little ones that I
Yeah.
got.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was, we talk about, certainly you and I have these conversations about transformative experiences in life, right? And what that means and what that looks like. And the truth is that transformation can take a lifetime of small, tiny steps towards something larger and more expanded and more uplifted and with a higher understanding. Or you can have a moment like I had, where I literally had a
In the blink of an eye.
sudden
Yeah.
insight, right? That was facilitated by somebody just right there in front of me telling me the truth.
And I think, quite honestly, I mean, we're both of an age, and neither one of us knows enough to go away and retire because we don't need to. What would we be doing? Sitting around? That wouldn't fit. But I think we have been blessed. And I think most people, if they stop and look at them, they're blessed with a big one. And then you've got all these little ahas. And then we're surprised when another big one comes because we think that was it. And all of a
Well,
sudden, here we are with another, whack alongside the head that says, wake up, Sandra, wake up, Carla, wake up.
don't you think that that's part of the incredible gift of writing a book?
Oh, this is
As
amazing, digging
right,
ourselves.
yeah, really sort of excavating the nuggets of our lives that really had us, you know, turn in a different direction or move in a different way or see through different eyes or open our hearts and soften our hearts or whatever it is. But when, there's an advantage to having some accumulated decades under your belt,
There is.
right? That allows you to kind of look back and say, oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I think that's our place in the world,
Yeah.
when we're here, we've got that. Well, we were the child, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, and we are here with the crone and the wisdom of the crone, even though we're still building our wisdom and still growing, because we're not finished till we cross the veil. And I actually think when we cross the veil, we're just growing some more into more spiritual spirit work. But I'm going to just go here. What perfect mark might I leave on the world? What difference could I possibly make that would sustain?
Hmm.
Is there a legacy I have not yet visioned that will add goodness to the world in a meaningful way? I think this is all the stuff you're struggling with as you're putting your book together.
Yeah. Those are the inquiries, right, that come forward. It's like, and it begins with I think for me at least, and I'd be interested in hearing about your experience, but for me, it begins with that decision to write.
Mm.
Who am I? What do I have to say? Why would I have anything? Who would ever, all of that 120,000 thoughts a day we think,
And we're trying to put them all in the
right?
book and
And
go,
they're most of them are the same ones, right? So it begins there. It begins that with I mean, this as it relates to writing the book, it begins with the decision to start, right? And to really evoke you, what it is you have on offer.
and that's tough. That's tough because what we have to offer is who we are, and it doesn't
Mm.
feel like work because it's who we are. And we have an awful time, at least I have an awful time, looking back and remembering the work I put into excavation every step of the way. Every step of the way. And that excavation is the journey. And that's the
Mm.
journey we hope to take everyone through that chooses to read our books.
Yeah.
Like, share our story and hope it matches up and helps others come through their story.
Yeah. I mean, I think we really want to stir the embers somewhere, right? to really just maybe touch a space that is just barely glowing anymore.
Yeah.
And to reignite that, to stir that, to call people forward into something that they might not have thought of or imagined or considered before, because the field of possibilities that we create for ourselves, right, is of our own creation.
Yes.
So, can I tell you a quick little story?
Oh, please do. Yes.
I didn't start medical school until I was 30. I was getting a divorce. I had 2 children. But
Wow.
2 years before that, I was living in Houston. I was married. I had these little kids. And I read an article in the newspaper, the Houston something, and it was about a woman who was in her 30s who was doing a surgical residency. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's really cool. And then suddenly, I cannot describe this experience in a way that really is rational. I suddenly had a knowing
Mm.
that I was being called into medicine.
Wow.
And I remember looking at the sky, because we all know that God lives in the sky, right?
Yeah.
and saying, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" But from that moment forward, I knew. Well, I absolutely knew. I had never taken a science course in my life.
Oh my goodness.
My parents were not high school graduates. I mean, I had a very inauspicious sort of life, always knowing that there was something out there that was niggling at me, just kind of pestering me, but I just had enough. I'd had enough drama and trauma and stuff at the age of 28 that I didn't want anymore.
Wow.
Um, and so that's how I ended up in medicine. So for me, right, it's yeah, yeah.
Oh, such a beautiful story because this knowing, sometimes people say, well, what on earth are you talking about? A
Right.
knowing is just a sense comes over you that there's the answer.
Yeah.
I had it, going to Al Anon for 7 years. When I was first starting, I was so broken. I could come home with one word, but bless that little Al Anon book had categories in the back. So if it was hope, I looked up everything that had anything hope. And before I went to sleep that night, I was reading every piece of hope. And I was just so hurting. And then I would go off to sleep. And the next morning, there'd be a new knowledge that had come in.
Yeah.
And it's a very strange feeling. And until that happens, they don't understand. But it is possible for all of us to have that transforming moment and transforming moments. It's not just one.
Yes.
Yours,
No.
yours was with the nurse. I mean, that was just another one,
Yeah.
really, because you'd
Yes.
already had that one at 28.
Yeah.
These are huge.
Yeah.
Our lives are just pivot points all along for another shift.
Yeah.
I don't know where mine came from because I kind of like to play. I like to sing and dance.
Yeah.
So I sing and
Me
dance around
too.
the world. I know I can see that, but you did
Yeah.
focus in and go for a career. I couldn't get back into teaching at the time. Mentors are so important. I didn't really have anybody that said, Sandra, just get back into your teaching, get taking that course you need, whatever. I had little babies to raise, and off I went and raised the babies for 6 years waitressing. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy.
Well,
Let me see what else you have through. What has
okay.
broken through to me over and over again is that the true legacy of our shared human experience is our capacity to love one another. Where is that taking you?
Yeah. Well, I don't have it right here, but I have a little heart about this big that I drew with colored crayon, right? That I almost always keep beside me. But I'm traveling and I'm in a different space, and it says in color crayon, "I am living love." And my commitment to that little colored crayon heart is to test my decisions, my actions, my reactions, my doing against that little color crayon "I am living love" declaration.
That allows you to make a decision with every breath, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you what's interesting is when I started in medicine, I remember saying if I could just love everyone well, I would do that. But I think I need to know some science.
Yeah, maybe.
And I actually fell in love with medicine. I have loved my life as a physician, and I've loved the science of it. I like to do procedures, and I had lots of those to do. Um, but as I sit in this space after 40 years in medicine, I recognize that the parts of me that I tried to hide
Mhm.
because I thought they weren't safe to be revealed in this very well-defined patriarchal space, and I love my male colleagues, so please know that there's nothing about that is accusatory. It
No.
is just the machinery by which medicine has been moved for decades, right? And
Yeah.
and so I put those aside, I put those away, I put them under cover, and to realize 40 years later that that is the magic balm, that love is the magic balm, that we can say the word love out loud and still be great scientists, great physicians, not be embarrassed, but know that that's all part of healership. And that healership for me now extends beyond, a bedside, into the larger world, because I've learned a lot standing
Hmm.
at bedsides. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so love. I read something. I think what I said is, regardless of the question or something like that, love is always the answer.
Yes.
Yeah, love is always the answer. And I would not have had the courage to say that out loud, maybe even 10 years ago,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that somehow that would impact my credibility, that I would lose my place in line, that I would somehow be tossed outside of the circle of tents. But I no longer am willing to stand in that space, um, on behalf of women and on behalf of anyone who is afraid to be revealed in any space for who they truly are and for the essence of our human nature, which is love, right? We're made for each other. We are made for connection. We're made to be together. We're tribal people, um, on behalf of one another. Uh, and I don't know when we became frightened of tender words.
It got connected to the wooey wooey world. Oh, that's going
Yeah,
to be wooey wooey. You're going to be, but this living as a human being has all of, the tax collectors coming. You got to put clothes on. You got to buy the clothes. You got to cook the food. We have to do all those practical
yeah,
things that keeps us away. I've just been working with my arthritis, and they've brought it up. It's been coming to me from different places. Like different people are saying, Sandra, arthritis can be healed. And I'm thinking, no, no. And lately I've run into a lady says, yes, it's ancestral. And that really bothered me in the last 2 or 3 days. I've been quite exhausted, needing to take a little snooze. And I think it's because I did some more automatic writing and studying and reading around it. And it truly is. Our pioneer ancestry came here, and they had to have that stiff upper lip. They had to hold
absolutely.
themselves rigidly. And where's arthritis? It's being in that rigid holding space. Then I can remember my grandma Reed in particular sitting in her rocking chair. She had 9 children, and her back was bone straight, and the pain was across her head. And she would sit there with her eyes closed and meditating. You know what she really wanted to do was to be able to love those children and nurture them.
Mhm.
But she had to have that stiff upper lip and take the hard knocks. And I'm recognizing I've been keeping a stiff upper lip. I can see how that can be ancestral. And I'm starting to work from that aspect.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so,
that's beautiful.
but of course, it's going to be the woo-woo world because medical doctors generally here you can go, you can answer to that because you've come to it. But in your own medical practice, that would have been, oh yeah, it's all in your head. Guess what? It is all in our head.
That's right. Yeah.
It is there. We're creating it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been surprisingly fortunate to be able to walk in both worlds over the last couple of decades and
Mhm.
still maintain, a fairly prominent place in my medical community. I just, in April of 2024, I just resigned from the medical executive committee of a large large hospital in Phoenix, part of a large chain. Um, After 30 years, I sat on that medical executive committee for 30 years um, and and maintained that very interesting capacity to hold both worlds in a way that really felt credible to the people around me. And I wonder sometimes if that is the place in which my gender has been an advantage.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. But you had to have the strength to allow it out to play.
yeah. Well, and I had also spent a couple of decades really proving myself as, in the context of the current culture, right?
Right.
You know, uh, Good at what I do, available, um, um, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you could call on me and trust that I'm going to take good care of people. I'm going to do what needs to be done. I'm going to be available. I'm going to show up. I'm going to have the hard conversations, all that kind of stuff. And I will bring my heart to work with me.
Yeah. It's beautiful once we recognize that we were doing it anyhow,
Yeah,
but it's so nice to not have to keep it behind that stiff upper lip, behind that wall, behind those boundaries that said, stay hidden, stay hidden.
yeah.
I'm just looking at the ticker tape here as it goes by. Bartering
Oh,
for belonging.
right.
That's the title, the working title of your book, anyhow. Bartering for belonging. So, what can we look for in that book?
Well, I think we've kind of alluded to it a little bit as we've shared this conversation, but the the invisible places are what I'm most interested in, right? The invisible places in which we put ourselves aside so we can fit somewhere that we don't actually fit,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
That the behavior that we're willing to shift in a heartbeat, right, to create the illusion of belonging in a space that we yearn for.
Right.
Right? The and the actual bartering that we do, I'll give you twice as much of me so that I can get what you have, right? It will cost me twice as much time, twice as much work, twice as much money, twice as much effort, twice as much of whatever, so that I can be at the table,
Wow.
right? And I recognize that the experience is shifting. And by the way, I speak from the perspective of having been a woman in a fairly male prominent world.
Yeah.
But I don't not think that is limited to women. I've been friends with physicians all my life, 90% of them men, and I've watched them tuck themselves away. I've watched them pay the price for,
Yeah.
um, bringing their tokens and laying them at the altar so that they could have the lifestyle they want, the reputation they want, whatever it is that lives in our inner resources and yearns and longs.
Right.
Um, Thinking, believing that somehow we will be anointed by that will grant us legitimacy and belonging in some imaginary club that doesn't even exist.
And the holding on to that,
Yeah,
that's, I think, the breaking point. Mine, I look to my big event, the biggest event that affected all my life that and there were others. I mean, my son passed away. So my daughter said, well, that had to be the one. And I said, no, it was the divorce, holding on so hard, trying to fix and just
yeah,
couldn't be enough. So that
yeah,
holding on until you break, that's what men do as well as the women. We hold
yeah,
on. We just can't seem to like just let it go. Stop it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that
Well,
biggest let go till your hands are empty and you're broken. So I had healed from there. So when my son
yeah,
went, I was much stronger in my own way, and there was a different kind of grief.
yes, yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry about that. That's so I can hear it, and unfortunately we heard that. But you know, it, it, I think what you're talking about it in a certain way is that when we look at our life events, sort of with inquiry,
Yes.
with curiosity, with a what is life showing me with this series of events? You can see now how things strengthened you, how the way was prepared for you, how you could step into the next life experience having been taught something or shown something, five in whatever that previous signature event might have been. And I think that's true for all of us if we're willing to take the look, but it's not necessarily for the weak of heart.
No, no. Growing
Yeah,
up, growing up, taking responsibility is not easy, but it is worth every bit of
yeah,
the surprises and the jolts and the whatever we go through, and we get on the other side and look back. And boy, life has been really a knockout in so many ways.
yeah. It's I recognize that. So I had some really significant events when I was young also, and so my mother died when I was a teenager, and I was the oldest child, and my father kind of disappeared. And I was pretty certain that meant there was something big, bad, and awful wrong with me and probably all of us, um, because that doesn't happen to people, right?
Yeah.
Like it felt like a punishment. And if that were a punishment, then there must be something wrong with me. And if I was going to continue to be in the world, then I was going to have to figure out a way to trick people into believing that I belonged,
Yep.
right? And that's kind of a dramatic example, but I'll tell you, my daughter recalls a day when in ballet when she was 12 or 13 when she was told, and she loved ballet. I mean, she was very, and this ballet instructor said to her, you'll never make it because you just don't have the legs for it. And she quit dancing within a year.
Oh,
She's now in her 50s and she takes tap.
can't get the music
But
out.
I
Can't
think
get
what I'm
the music
saying
out.
though is it doesn't have to be like a divorce or the death of your son. It can be those micro
Yes.
aggressions, is what we call them, but those micro aggressions against what you believe yourself to be, right?
Right. Yeah.
And of course, we are agile. I'm not, I am not who I was when I was 20.
No, thank goodness we'd be pretty boring if we were still the same, doing the same life year after year
Yeah.
after year. Just
I had a lot
couldn't.
of fun though. I mean,
I
but you
mean,
know what I'm saying? I mean, this is about growth. It's about learning. It's about expansion. It's about upliftment. It's about, really lifting, to wonderful spaces and dropping and collapsing into the darkness and knowing that it's all part of this. It's all part of being human.
yeah. And that's the shadow work that we speak of. But we often wonder, what do you mean shadow work? But the shadow work is that dark places that we go and
Yeah.
uncover ourselves and bring ourselves back to the light. And so the shadow work is really where the tough sledding happens. It's not in the sunshine when everything's going great, but the struggle and the working through it is so worth it. I'm just going to see what else I had here as we wind
Okay.
up. What has
Do you
broken
care? Go ahead. Yep.
what has broken through to me over and over again is that the true legacy of our shared human experience is our capacity to love one another in the closeness of our inner circle and extending ever outward beyond any imagined boundaries of containment. No matter what, love is always the answer. How would you like to give us your closing words for today? Because this has been absolutely amazing, and your bartering for belonging is going to be a wonderful book. How would
So
you like to close?
I think what I really am pointing to with in this conversation, ultimately in the revelation that will unfold with the book, is this: that we can become the love of our own lives, that we can become our own heart's desire, our own soulmate. And when we become that, that's what we have on offer. That's what we spread. That no matter what we do, no matter what our doing is, you can tinker as a doctor, or you can be a seamstress, or you can work at a convenience store, or maybe you can practice law. I'm not sure. I have friends who are lawyers that tell me they have hearts. um, um, but no matter what you do, right? The space from which you operate, which you move in the world, is that space of loving service. And when that you have that to offer the world, you leave a legacy that is unmatched by any award or certificate or anything else. And if I could just tell you, some of this all emerged because my grandchildren wrote me love letters for my birthday, and I was so humbled by that experience and so aware that that's it. That's the essence. That's what we have and hold in this lifetime that matters more than anything else. So my final words are just be the love of your own life.
Beautiful. And amen to that. Oh, wow. It has been an absolute treasure this time together. Thank you, Carla, for
Thank you so
coming on
much.
for the conversations with Sandra and sharing all that inner love that's just glowing and going to be flowing out of your book.
Thank you. I love what you do.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye,
bye.
everyone.